Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome to Alumless. It's Friday, 11:30, our usual time. I am Ryan Catherwood, your host for the show. With me always is Chris Marshall.
Hey Wayne, party on.
Yeah, party on. There's so many people that won't get that reference. I'm not even really sure why I whipped it out in the opening segment.
It was not in the script, I can tell you that.
It was not in the script. We like to follow our script. But it's great to see you, Chris. It's great to have everybody joining us today. We've got a great guest in Annie Quade from University of Texas at El Paso. We've got an exciting show, and we're going to cover lots of topics, including merging alumni engagement and donor engagement. We're going to talk about what it's like working at a Hispanic-serving institution at UTEP, and then we're going to have our Friday Cheers section in the bonus segment of the podcast version. So make sure to pick up the bonus segment. As you all know, you're listening in on the CMAC page on LinkedIn. This is a CMAC production. And Chris, how is CMAC today? You are CMAC. We are CMAC.
We are, but it's good. It's good. We're celebrating a birthday in our house. I know you have some recent in your family. My son turns 13 today, so we're off to a water park right after this recording. So
that's awesome. Well, I do want to mention we have a fantastic sponsor of Alumless. Protopia is, I work as an independent consultant and with Protopia as well. The role of AI in today's advancement shop is on the front burner for every senior leader these days. And it's not just ChatGPT. For the last 3 years, Protopia has helped university partners like Duke and the London School of Economics scale engagement with alumni and donors using AI. And Protopia's technology enables simple, scalable engagement across all 4 case modes for engagement without ever asking a student, alum, or donor to sign up for anything new. It's a lead generation tool for advancement while also a valuable resource for the campus community. Visit protopia.co/alumless for more information and to check out their special offer just for Alumless listeners. Chris, and I also wanted to mention that Max at Protopia was just telling me he's presenting with Carrie Jones and Wallace Spence of the London School of Economics at the CASE Europe conference. Very really cool. Getting a lot of traction. And Max was actually just sharing with me that they made Protopia available to all the attendees of the conference.
Love that idea. Yeah.
So you'll be able to go as an attendee, you'll be able to ask a question, they'll send the question to the folks at attending the conference, best positioned to answer it. Really exciting for Protopia.
Good.
So Chris, it is the end of summer. It is time to move in. I just saw on LinkedIn, Facebook, lots of pictures of university move-in days. I'm sure your feed included a lot of those.
Yep, same.
Do you have any memories from those first couple of days, either as an alumni leader or even going all the way back to your college days of those move-in first few days?
Thanks for that all the way back.
All the way back.
We took dirt roads and horse and buggy when I went to college for freshman moving. So I was an RA. I spent time in the residence hall system as an upper class person. So I did many move-in days in depth. And even as a staff member at Lehigh, we used to all volunteer and help move in. It was almost an annual thing. But my fondest memory was way back to my freshman year. The dorm I was staying in, many of the dorms up where I was were all named after former Lehigh presidents. And the dorm I was staying in freshman year was named after Henry Sturgis Drinker. And everybody referred to it as Drinker. So the sign, as we pulled up to drop me off, this is now the fall of '84. So things were different then. The bedsheet sign hung from the windows said, "Welcome, drinkers." So that was my arrival to campus. So welcome, drinkers sign, meaning people who are living in Drinker, of course. Nothing to do with the activity.
But as an RA, you have to be a little concerned about that. I was an RA too for 2 of my years, my sophomore and junior year. I really liked coming back to campus actually a week early. It was kind of a little more quiet and really have a chance to help the new students move in. I really enjoyed it. And as a freshman, I recall orientation, and I was sitting next to this guy who ended up being one of my best friends for the entire college duration. We had the same pair of Reef flip-flops on at the same time. We're like, "Oh, hey, I like your flip-flops." And he was, "Yeah, I like yours too." And so that was it. Like, that was the beginning of a lifelong friendship. And in fact, 20 years later, he's coming to stay in a couple weekends with his family while our
That's
kids
cool.
play in the same soccer tournament. So
Very cool.
these things happen in those early days.
Yep.
But today we're going to talk with Annie Quade from UTEP about the challenges of merging alumni and donor engagement and what's happening in the field that's propelling more and more of those teams to be more integrated. But I wanted to ask you about that. Sort of broadly speaking, what's going on out there that makes people think more about this particular integration around alumni and donor engagement?
I put it in the trend category that we're seeing an increase in more of a constituency lens, which includes other audiences, certainly donors. Thinking about an integrated advancement team, so alumni leaning into the donor side. That's been going on for some time now. But I have a client, for example, who's they don't refer to their population as alumni only. They call it constituent engagement, and their audiences are alumni, families, fans, and friends. Alumni and the 3 F's is how they think about it. And I'll never forget when I was working with Indiana University. We've had some folks on from Indiana. We're going to have another on coming up soon. During their strategic planning process, we were trying to define that audience. Is it alumni, parents, students, faculty, staff? We're in all the different, and it's too many names to put into a statement. So they ended up with saying their phrase was, "For all who love IU." So if you had the affinity to IU, you cared about it. It doesn't matter where you're from, whether you're an alum or not. It's if you love it, you'll be part of our constituency that we care about. That's how they defined it. So interesting. I'm seeing that lens getting broader is what I would just describe as the trend.
Yeah, a few schools kind of dropping the word alumni from it at all, just being the Office of Engagement. I know that's true at the University of Virginia. We had Erica Arroyo from the University of Miami who leads the Office of Engagement there. And it's really kind of thinking holistically, right, about engagement and less about specific stakeholder groups, even though, the alumni constituent group is a really important one with different types of needs and values. We're going to talk more about that. So let's bring Annie out to the show. Oh, it's just me. I clicked on me and not Annie. There we go. Hey, Annie, how's it going?
Hey, it's going great. Good to see you all. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you here.
Glad you could be on the show today. Thanks for joining us. And thanks for the folks listening in, Matt Winston and Sally Sistar, and Max is joining us too. So please be sure to ask questions in the chat on the LinkedIn group, LinkedIn event, I should say, and we'll be happy to answer those. And better yet, if you have any questions for Annie, we'd be grateful if you'd pop them in there. But Annie, you and the team at UTEP are working on merging alumni and donor engagement strategies, which includes annual giving, marketing, and communications. Sort of picking up on Chris's thoughts, what propelled you to make this move or sort of help guide the advancement organization with that move?
Yeah. And first of all, I really like the "for all who love IU." I think that's a really
cool?
great way to put it. We're kind of thinking about it in the sense of minor nation and the same idea of sort of anyone and everyone who wants to support our institution. But Ryan, to your point, to your question, when we're thinking about this merged integrated strategy, what we're really focusing in on is philanthropy focused engagement at scale. And when it comes to thinking about like, why now, why are we doing this? I think there's first of all, there's the sense of why the institution, and then I also why do I care about this a whole lot? For the institution, this idea really just goes in line with our values. UTEP is all about access and excellence. The majority of our students are first gen, the first in their family to go to college, and we are one of the only open access R1 institutions. And so when we think about removing barriers to engaging with our alumni network, with fellow minors, especially after graduation, having a paywall in the sense of alumni dues or having a location barrier based on in-person events only or only locally based events really doesn't align with our values as an institution and what we really stand for. And so by making this shift, I think we're really just starting to live into our values. Personally, I started my advancement career in engagement, starting with student engagement, then recent grad, went on to run a small alumni association for a small college. But it really wasn't until I got into major gifts and planned gifts that I really felt my own personal engagement in my work really increase. And so I think there's also this component around making this shift in order to think about recruitment, retention, and staff engagement for alumni, or just in general engagement professionals overall. Because I think many of us at our institutions would say that for those core staff members who are not a frontline fundraiser, there can be a little bit of a harder time getting them to feel like they're really driving the mission, feeling really connected to what we do. And shifting into this integrated approach, I think, I hope, I imagine, is going to really increase our team engagement as well.
I think it will over time. I've had a chance to work with you for the last several months. I'm really excited about what you all are doing at UTEP. But well, maybe you could share. How's it going so far? And have you encountered any roadblocks?
Certainly, anytime you're making change, there's going to be, I don't know about roadblocks, but speed bumps for sure. Overall, it's going really great. It's wonderful because I have phenomenal teammates in our division. Wonderful humans who are resilient and open-minded and intrigued to explore what if. And that I'll take that any day, right? But there's certainly going to be some speed bumps and some challenges with identifying which activities do we downshift, which activities do we fully sunset. How do we shift our focus of some of the activities that we really want to keep, but we need to get them to fit this new strategy? There's a lot of pieces to that. And then, of course, as y'all know, there's also a volunteer board with our Alumni Association board. And so it's one thing to kind of make this shift and this change with our staff. It's another thing to gain that support and trust of the volunteer board. That's critical as well. So yeah,
that's a big piece.
That's always a challenge, right, Chris?
No, I mean that's can be more challenging than the staff component. The staff part, you risk losing talent, but the volunteer part, you risk losing, the interest or the support of a group of people that had a different mindset about how they engage with the institution, and now you're asking them to shift. What I have found, though, the best process through is when you get somebody on that board, to actually lean in with you on it, is where the rest of the volunteers will get on board with you.
Absolutely. And we've also been thinking about what are the early wins and how we sequence some of this change so that we have objective things to point back to say, like, hey, look, trust us to kind of build that commitment and that demonstration of we know what we're doing a little bit.
Yeah. This sounds a little too trite, but what you just described, in my opinion, when you, as a leader, defining leadership is getting people to go do something and making them think it's their idea to go do so. I mean, it sounds a little bit trite, but that's a part of it. I really believe.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
I'm sure you've set up. I know your title and your role. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. Is pretty has a lot of breadth to it of what you cover. But my guess is you've done some planning and setting goals for the year and looking ahead at what you want to have as an outcome. If you had to pick one goal that you want to achieve this coming year, what would it be?
Focus. It's not going to be anything quantitative. It's just going to be focused. That is the theme, the intention, what we are manifesting this year for the team. And with that comes boundaries. So we have, I think, previously fallen into the trap, like many teams do. This is not unique to UTEP, not unique to engagement teams. But we have fallen into the trap of adding without considering what needs to fall off or stop in order to keep following, this new strategy.
You're the only school I've ever heard have this problem, Annie.
Only one. No one has ever experienced this before, right? And so, with that, we are really trying to get out of that reactive stance into that proactive stance. And for us, that means really asking our team to do a deep dive into planning in a way that we haven't necessarily done before. And then committing to, like, here's what's on the roadmap for the year. And outside of some very, very, very specific, mostly gift announcements, exceptions, like, we can't deviate from this. If we want, if there's a brilliant idea or new technology or whatever comes out over the next year, we need to be prepared to say, yeah, that's great. We'll add it to the roadmap for next year, because our team has certainly felt the team engagement effects of not setting those boundaries and holding those boundaries. And that's something that needs to change.
Yeah. The other thing I found in that is the ability to say no to someone on your team who has the idea
Yes.
is easy relative to a volunteer, a donor, a high-level donor, your boss, the board of trustees, or the president. When it comes from them to say no, not right now, we need them all on board to have your back on that focus that you're talking about. Love it.
Yeah.
Hey, Ryan, real quick, I'm going to ask for a challenge. Anybody online who's listening live in the chat, if you can put in what I always say is the 3 most important words in alumni engagement. If you can put that in the chat, whoever puts it in first will win a CMAC prize. We'll figure it out later what it is. But
I was gonna say, do we have CMAC prizes?
We get shirts. We got
stuff.
We'll figure it.
That's true. Well, Annie, you and I have known each other for several years now, preceding my consulting work. Right when I was back at Longwood, we had an ongoing conversation going. I know you're passionate about modern approaches to engagement and technology, and I wanted to sort of ask you, when you think about the supporting technology that you think is really important as you're bringing together these engagement strategies and practices, what comes to mind? What's most important for you all?
Yeah. So my first answer is really, really basic. But if any shop doesn't have this piece in place, that has to be a building block first. And that is updating and shifting your Microsoft usage to the cloud variations and getting away from network drives and onto the cloud side. When, I know we've all experienced these, especially pre-pandemic, version 1, version 2, version 3, or you like add your initials to the end of the Word doc, and then you can't keep track of which one was the most recent. Yeah, that's so silly. So
I didn't tip her off to say that, Chris.
Ryan, I'm thinking about you.
I didn't tip her off to say that.
We hit an ongoing debate.
We may or may not have that problem here at CMAC.
Well, yes, that's one of the first things that when I joined UTEP, it was during the pandemic, and my goodness, that was something that we shifted away from rather quickly and fully embraced SharePoint, OneDrive, Teams. There are so many resources that are already available to so many institutions through the Microsoft platform and the enterprise license that every university has, that if your budget is tight, go into a deep dive exploring that. There's so many free ways to learn more about them. But that's been a huge one. The next is project management. I can't say it enough. I don't care which platform you choose, just choose one, stick with it. We use Asana. It's wonderful. I don't know how we functioned before we had it, quite honestly, but being able to see all the different pieces of a project, who's owning it, bringing that transparency into our work and into how we collaborate has been so critical for us to be able to identify earlier when there's going to be tension, when there's going to be something that's holding us up, and getting ahead of it sooner. And then the last piece I'm going to throw out there is AI. Even if it's free chat GPT, things I've been telling the team have been, just keep working smarter, not harder. And there's so much potential there with that product that we have to start embracing it. So we've used it to draft a press release or draft a job description. I even dumped some data in there without any identifiable information, of course, and told it like, hey, give me a summary, help me synthesize and understand what the heck this all means. And it was incredible. So that would be the other piece that I would share.
And I'd also add something that you're working to deploy there, Annie, is a sort of advanced marketing software, tools like Salesforce Marketing Cloud, tools like Eloqua that really help track the work that you're doing through email communication, social media communication. I know how important that is for your plans for the team. And yeah, I think it's adding to those two first really great suggestions, or three great suggestions, is that type of technology that we often find is missing in advancement organizations. It would really be beneficial to scaling engagement to have those in place.
Yes, just buy yourself a little extra time for implementation, because some
Yeah, I
of
mean,
them have a
it's
little
also
bit of a
fair.
learning curve, right?
There's a learning curve, and maybe not every program is ready for that type of
Right.
software. I think you do have to be working up into that place. But so, Annie, you're an AVP of Advancement, Associate Vice President for Advancement, and leading the shift from traditional engagement to integrated philanthropy-focused engagement. This includes Marcom and annual giving, but you're also managing talent and people operations and finance, and you're doing this all as a full-time remote employee. There are those out there who might be saying, this should not be attempted, but it's working at UTEP, and I think that that's fantastic. But maybe what's happening? How are you making it work?
For sure. So first, I do want to clarify full-time remote. By that, I mean, because every place has little slightly different variations. I do not live in El Paso. I do not live in Texas. I actually live in Missouri. But I do come to campus with some regularity. So about 4 to 6 times a year, I'm in town for a week, fully immersed. And so some could call that still hybrid, whatever you want to call it. That's what our arrangement is. I'm not the only AVP on our team who works out from another state, nor am I the only AVP at the university who works outside of El Paso. So the first and foremost thing is that we have a university president who believes in and understands the advantages and the opportunities, as well as the cost, to being open to flexible work arrangements. And she also allows her VPs on cabinet to run their business units as their own. And so it's up to each individual VP how they want to approach flexible work, and not something that's dictated from the university down, which I know not everyone is afforded that opportunity from the beginning. And then from our VP level, same thing, understands the opportunities, understands both the advantages and the disadvantages to having someone who works away from campus. But in general, for us, having flexible work arrangements for our entire team. So while I live outside of El Paso and outside of Texas, our entire team is hybrid. But for us, it has been super important for recruitment, and it's been amazing to see the difference that it makes to our candidate pool, or to be able to land a candidate that we otherwise would not have been able to. Retention, I think there's research out of Stanford now that's saying flexible work is equivalent to like an 8% salary increase for some folks. So retention is certainly a piece. I know some of our teammates who have gotten offers elsewhere and have chosen to stay because of the flexibility we provide. The next generation of leadership, we certainly know that generation is going to demand both in-person and work from home opportunities. And it would be silly for us to ignore that. And lastly, and I know that this is important to our VP in particular, if we have any hope in diversifying our industry, especially at the leadership level, being open to flexible and remote work arrangements is critical to supporting leaders with marginalized identities. And so, so it's working.
I think it's fantastic. I'm so glad it's working, and I wish more universities had your approach. I suppose I do understand the counter argument, but
sure,
I think it just makes a lot of sense, and it would certainly be the environment I would want to work in, and that I would hope to lead personally under the same circumstances. Chris, how do you feel about the concept of the fully remote or hybrid work arrangement that Annie described, or other sort of similar arrangements?
Yeah. I was smiling and nodding my head and want to say amen, hallelujah to everything you said, Annie. I mean, if I were to say to Ryan he has to move to Bethlehem, PA to have a job with CMAX, you and I can meet in person, he wouldn't do it. And you wouldn't, I don't want to speak for you, but my guess is you probably would not move to Texas, let alone El Paso, to take this job. And it allows us the recruitment of talent, of really talented people, retention, as you mentioned, all those things. it's about time we got to this point in our industry. But like you, Ryan, I understand the counter argument about having people in the same physical location, and I get that. But the pros and cons, if you weigh the both, to me, it's just far outweighs on the pro side. So I love that we're seeing it. I love that UTEP and your vice president has allowed. You should give the vice president, she or he, a shout out for this, because that's a great thing to have. Who is your VP?
I will. Yeah, Jake Logan.
Yeah, good for Jake.
Yeah,
take that approach. Yep.
Yes, it is a phenomenal approach.
Do his other vice presidents take a similar, or are there some that are more traditional and got to be here on campus? It could be
sure.
Might be having to do with the role itself, but
yeah. So cabinet's a little bit split, and they've been coming around to it. So institutional advancement and Jake were certainly the ringleaders and the trendsetters at UTEP. But for example, University Markham hired at least one, if not two, AVPs that live outside of El Paso now as well. And the VP for marketing and communications had told me, like, hey, I'm so glad that Jake did it first. He really and I know at some points, like, there was some tension, and it is hard. And, there's pieces and times where I know Jake's had to go to bat and everything around supporting this arrangement. And as our executive leadership team, we talked about the easiest option here would be to tell everyone they have to come back into the office full time. That would have been the easiest, least difficult, like the number of hours our executive leadership team talked through all the different scenarios and everything else to really commit to our hybrid arrangement. But at the end of the day, that was what we knew would be best for our teammates as humans too, not just as their positions or their roles on our team.
My voice in that discussion would have been, it might be easiest for us to make that decision to save all this time, but we'd be spending all of our time hiring new people because you have a mass exodus is what would happen.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
Constantly backfilling positions because people are looking for these types of hybrid arrangements.
Right, yeah.
But with that in mind, Annie, when you do visit campus, what do you do to make the best of those times with your team?
Well, one of the most important things is that the things that I'm doing when I'm on campus, and this actually doesn't apply to just me, I reiterate this to my team as well. When you're on campus and you're in the office, try to be doing things that you otherwise could not do from home. So that really is the best time to have those more collaborative meetings, to have those brainstorming sessions, to get out the whiteboard and draw all over it, those sorts of things. So I'm really intentional about any meeting that's going to be completely virtual, and I could have been doing it from Missouri. I try to shift either before or after the trip. Those trips are also exhausting and energizing at the same time because they are jam-packed with meetings. Yeah, I'm typically going from like 7 a.m. until 7, 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night because I'll try to prioritize the time that I have with my teammates or teammates across the division during the workday. And then oftentimes our leadership team will get together in the evenings so that we can continue to have more time together while we're all in person. And, to all the points that we've already mentioned, when I started in this role, it was during COVID, right? And I think everyone understood why I wasn't there in person at the beginning. And then there would be, as everything started to open up, there would be teammates who would be like, so when are you going to move? And I was like, well, I'm not. And, I definitely think there was some skepticism at first, especially at a place like UTEP where there is such a familial and tight-knit community. To have someone who's not going to move there, I think there is definitely some skepticism, definitely some questioning of my commitment. And even though I'm first gen myself and my dad immigrated from Cuba, I very much present white. And I think there was definitely this who is this person who's not from our community? She doesn't know anything about El Paso. And so, especially at the beginning, especially that first year when travel opened up, I tried to travel significantly more and closer together than I do today. because I really wanted to be intentional and help the team understand that I'm not just committed to our team, but I'm committed to this institution and to the larger community as well. And that also goes to my counterparts across the university and making sure that I was also intentional with the HR office and the budget office and student affairs and whoever else, so that I could also build that trust in those relationships while I was in person to lean on them when I'm virtual.
Awesome. Well, we're going to keep the conversation going in our bonus section. We've already been talking for a fast 30 minutes. Thanks for everyone for joining us. Monica and Adrian and Todd, thanks for checking in. Indeed, Mizzou made. Thanks for great to have you all joining the feed. Before we do, Chris, we're actually going to take the Labor Day weekend off, the Friday, and we're going to be back on September the 8th with a legend in the space. I would say it's pretty fair.
We're going to skip the first, and then we'll pick back up again in the regular routine, which would be the 15th is when Rob is on. So just keep that on your schedule. We'll get it out on LinkedIn and other places. But Rob Schoss from the Performance Enhancement Group, Alumni Attitudinal Study. Many people have worked with Rob. Several hundred institutions have done a PEG survey, as they call it, AAS. And we'll have Rob on to talk about surveying your alumni. Before we sign off, I want to, Adrian took a shot at the 3 words. Well, she mentioned 3 very important words: relationships, connection, affinity, and inclusivity. All very important. My 3 most important words for alumni engagement are focus, focus, and focus. So, Andy, thanks for having focus.
You're welcome.
It was a real curveball there, Chris.
It was.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. We'll pick things up on the podcast. Have a great weekend and see you after the holiday weekend in September. Bye.
Thanks, Annie.
Thank you.